Hey guys, Jake and James here from Flawless Films. Today we've got another tutorial for you on how to get the film look on a DSLR camera. So straight into it, the first point, and definitely one of the most important points, is you must be filming with your camera on the manual setting. Taking it off auto means that when you're going in and out of different lighting setups or different focal ranges, then the camera won't be trying to adjust itself and kind of I'm sure you've seen it before where it kind of gets lighter and darker as it's trying to adjust itself. You don't want that. You want to be able to have your own control. So that's definitely the first stage.
Yep, and the other thing you want to remember is it's always better to go too dark in your shot than too bright. Overexposure is a really amateur look and it's something you cannot save in post. When it's too dark, you can still bring it up and maybe put a denoiser on it, but if it is too bright, you're lost. Your footage is just gone and it looks rubbish. The next thing we want to talk about is all the main settings on your camera, which is your ISO, your aperture, your frame rate, and your shutter speed. Now with your ISO, every camera has a native ISO. On digital cameras, it tends to be around 800 if they're full frame, but this is rough, but you can quickly Google it to find out your specific camera's native ISO. And the reason that's a good thing is because it's got the widest dynamic range at this number. But something you want to remember with your DSLR, especially with Canon and Magic Lantern, something like that, is that you want to avoid multiples of 125. This is because it basically is a digital exposure push, which basically makes all the footage a lot noisier. You want to aim for the multiples of 160 because this is a digital noise pull back from ISO 200 for 160, for example, and this hides a lot of the noise that you would be getting at that higher exposure. Now the next one is aperture, which is basically a depth of field. You want to be aiming for a really low one for that really nice arty film look. So you want to be looking at a nice prime lens, something like an f1.4, 1.8, somewhere around there. That gives you a really nice look.
But again, it's more of quite often a personal choice. Some people prefer to have a very shallow depth of field, others don't. It can again come down to the type of film you're making. Moving on, we have your frame rate. This is obviously how many frames you have per second of footage. Now, most commonly for film, you'll have 24 or 25 frames per second. Technically, 50 or 60 frames should look more realistic because I think that's how our eye sees in that many frames per second, but it's just not what we're used to with film. So to get that film look, to mimic that film look, you want to stick to around 24, 25 frames per second. And finally, we have shutter speed. To get that, again, filmic look, you want to set the speed of your shutter to around double what your frame rate is. That's the general rule.
Okay, one of your most important things as well is lighting. You want to get your lighting right and then adjust your camera settings to the right lighting. We're not going to go through it too much as we have done a previous tutorial on 3-point lighting, which is your basic setup. Have a look at that and then you'll understand how to basically light a scene for the best kind of look.
In most Hollywood films or bigger production movies, you will have smooth shots. Obviously, these are done on very expensive stabilizers and steadicams and stuff. Obviously, if you're using a DSLR, I'm assuming you don't have a multi-million-pound budget to work on your film. So there are alternatives. If you have a decent editing software like Adobe Premiere or After Effects, they have built-in plugins called Warp Stabilizer. There are others out there that do a similar sort of thing, but it's very simple. You basically just drag and drop, adjust the settings, and it will stabilize the footage for you. It's not always perfect. There's a lot of factors to think about when doing it, so don't expect miracles from it, but it is a great alternative. Again, if you do have some money, you can buy things like sliders, which are very cheap, great for movement on close-up shots. Or you could buy like a Ronin, something like that. Obviously, again, they're a little more expensive, or you can get a Steadicam. There's many different ways to add nice smooth movement into your shots to make them look very nice and filmy.
Okay, next you're going to be looking at the picture style on your DSLR. The auto way that the camera does it is always very contrasted, very saturated, and it basically makes it really hard to do any kind of decent color grade in post. So what you're going to want to do is, in a way, neutralize the image you're shooting, so when you bring it into your post color correction software, you can do as much as you want with it. To do something like this, you're going to want to go into your picture style within your DSLR. As you see here, it's just on a Canon one. All you're going to want to do is bring the sharpness of the image all the way down to 0, because an overshot image does make it look very cheap and quite amateurish. Same with your contrast, bring it all the way down. This is so you got more to play with in your highlights and your blacks, just so you don't lose any information before you bring it into color grade. Next one is your saturation. Just bring that down a bit as well, because the cameras do like to make all the colors pop as much as they can on auto. It just tends to be a bit more pleasing, but if you want to correct it yourself, you need to have more room to play with. And finally, your color tone on this one, we just leave that as it is, as that doesn't tend to affect too much.
So the final stage for getting that film look on your videos is the color grade. Now, this is mainly down to personal preference, but there tends to be some very general, almost looks for different genres. So if you've got like a comedy video, it tends to be corrected and graded quite colourful and light. Obviously horror is quite desaturated, not much colour in the shots, quite contrasted. So obviously it's different for whatever kind of feel you're going for, but at the end of the day, it's completely down to your personal preference. Why not try a very colourful horror movie? See how it goes. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So hopefully you've learned something about how to make your films look quite filmy using a DSLR camera. Don't forget, we've got lots of tutorials up on our channel for filmmaking, for action, for special effects, for everything. And we will be having 2 uploads coming every week, Tuesdays and Saturdays, so do not forget to subscribe.
Yep, and also please remember to like the video, leave us a comment. We want to talk to you guys as much as we hope you want to talk to us. So let's get a conversation going in the comments below.
Yeah, thanks a lot for watching. We hope you learned something and we hope you enjoyed it. See you Saturday.
Saturday.
Bye guys, love you. Woo.